Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I wanted to ask you, I come from the proud state of New Hampshire, the live free or die state. And one of the things that we, I think, put a premium on in our state is, privacy and issues of personal protection. And we are in a situation where on the 2005 Real ID Act, there are some provisions of it we've complied with, 32 of those. But our legislature, on a bipartisan basis, has really spoken for the people of New Hampshire and their reflection on prohibiting compliance with certain parts of the Real ID Act. So I guess I have a question for you. In 2000, as you know, we also wrote you recently. I don't know if you've seen it, myself and the entire delegation, because we have not been granted an additional extension where some other states have been in terms of the compliance with the Real ID Act. But I just need to understand for the people of New Hampshire, and I support their concerns, by the way. I think that this is legitimate, and I think that people in New Hampshire, we're a state that certainly values protecting our national security and the public, but we're also a state that has a long, proud tradition on a bipartisan basis of protecting privacy and people's concerns. And I just want to understand, starting in 2016, since we have not yet been granted this extension, will this administration essentially prohibit Granite State families from getting on a commercial airline with a valid New Hampshire license? Because that seems to me the implication that, we've got 1.3 million people in our state and want to understand what happens if you haven't granted us an extension like you have other states. And we have valid concerns with this law that I think that many other people share. And you know what, I support my constituents on this.
Senator, the Real ID Act was passed by Congress in 2005 or 2006, and my department is charged with implementing it. We've done so on a very deliberate timeline. I did receive your letter, and our assessment is that it would not be very difficult for the state of New Hampshire to put itself in a position where we can give you an extension. There are the overwhelming majority of states out there that either have complied or have been granted extensions. And I recall from the discussion with my staff that it would not be that difficult for the state to put itself on the path to an extension, and I would certainly encourage you to encourage state officials to do that. It's a law that I'm charged with implementing.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I think the issue is it wouldn't be that difficult if we do what the federal government wants us to do. And I think that happens a lot in terms of basically states being told what to do. And this is one where my state feels really strongly about it. I hope that you'll look at our letter seriously again. And I think that this has been an issue that New Hampshire's spoken loudly and clearly on, and I hope that you'll look again at the letter. But when you say it's easy for us to comply, I think that translates to, yes, if we do what the federal government asks us to do. And so, again, I hope you'll go back, look at the letter, because this is a real issue for people in New Hampshire, and it's a important issue for them.
I certainly don't want to see 1.3 million people in your state have an issue at airports, and so our folks want to work with state officials to avoid that.
Good. I don't either, and I also respect their rights to exercise their viewpoints and the importance that they place on issues like privacy as well. I wanted to follow up. I'm really pleased that yesterday the President announced the formal nomination of Vice Admiral Peter Neffinger to become TSA Administrator, because I know that's a very important position that needs to be filled, and I'm looking forward to us moving quickly on that. And I'm also a chair of, of the Aviation Subcommittee, so it's important. With regard to TSA PreCheck, as we try to increase the population participating in the program, which has been a very good program, I think it's important that we delineate between those who have been vetted and those who have received expedited screening through other avenues. such as managed inclusion. And I recently had a chance to sit down with Inspector General John Roth, and while I can't get into the details in this setting, what's your assessment of the pre-check program? What's your assessment of the role of managed inclusion, to the extent you can comment on that here? And are we sufficiently screening the population and really separating those who should be in the program and who aren't?
My assessment of TSA PreCheck is that it's a good program. It's popular with the American public. And in this public setting, I will say that I think we have to managed inclusion very carefully and not overdo it. The original intent of TSA PreCheck was that people who have been vetted go through the shorter lines. And so, you know, I've said to TSA, I want to be sure that when it comes to the managed inclusion facet of the program, that we look at that and we manage that very carefully.
I'm glad to hear that. And, you know, in my other role as the aviation chair, I look forward to working with you on that. I think it's important. I think PreCheck is a great program, but we need to make sure that this program is managed carefully on the inclusion issue. And one final question. Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, Secretary Johnson, this airport is the largest in my state. It serves a lot of folks in the New England region, including Boston and New Hampshire, of course. It's a user fee airport with limited access to Customs and Border Protection services. How's port of entry defined, and are there instances where port of entry encompasses more than one physical or geographic location? And is this an issue I can work with you on in terms of working with my office to address some of the concerns that Manchester-Boston Regional Airport has raised on port of entry?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd really appreciate it.
I don't know the answer to the question you asked about how to define port of entry, but happy to have further dialogue about that.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.